Welcome to the podcast that explores mysterious disappearances, bizarre worldly occurrences, strange phenomenon, and basically everything that's weird. Welcome to the podcast, everything that's weird. We're your hosts, Brandon and Anthony, and tonight we're talking about Craig, Alaska.
Yeah, you guys, everybody knows Craig.
Right. I mean, actually, I had heard of this story before we did the 50 States, 50 Mysteries.
Right.
I had heard of the story, but it's kind of one of those things you hear in passing.
Mm-hmm. That's what it was for me, but it was from you.
Right. And okay, so look, we could. I know I say this a lot on our podcast, but right. This is one of those stories. You could do a super deep dive.
Sure. And
do a whole season of podcast about that.
Oh yeah, this is somebody knows something,
Right. And there's so many characters and people involved, but we're kind of just going to give you the overview. So this is what happened. Craig, Alaska is a tiny town in Alaska. The population 1,300 at the time when this happened. So if that's any indication of how little it is. However, it is like a port for fishermen. So
and you said what? It was 1,300 people
at the time that this happened.
Yeah, it's got less now.
Does it?
Yeah.
So salmon was big, and then so out of inland, there's big game hunting, but it's a typical fishing village in Alaska. Yeah. It's but it is a hub for fishermen, and there is a market for fish there.
And it's got some pretty bad neighborhoods too. So it's got a pretty bad area, and they say that one side's better than the other.
They do say that.
Yeah, and it's crime rate's actually it's up there decently. I mean, it's 46.25 per 1,000 residents.
So a lot of people think Alaska is just like the wild. It really isn't. There's hoods in Alaska, right?
Yeah, Anchorage has got a big crime rate.
Yeah, and it's not like a typical hood. There's all kinds of races and people, and all every color of people are there, and they're all committing crime, right?
Yeah.
Additionally, a lot of people go to Alaska that have committed crimes.
Yes. Because
it's so far away.
Yeah.
That they don't think they'll be extradited back to wherever they committed their crime. And honestly, if you think about it, you commit a crime in Florida and you go to Alaska, it's really hard to get you back, right?
Yeah.
They got to send somebody up there. They got to fly them up there.
Oh, they go. They got the whole spectrum. It goes from the reasons why people go up there. It goes all the way from stoner to stone cold killer.
Exactly
that whole spectrum in between.
And you're so close to Canada that any law enforcement agency is we'll go get them in Alaska. No, because if they go into Canada, that's a whole other bureaucracy of getting into Canada and whatever.
And that part of Canada isn't very populated,
right?
At all.
So even though we have good extradition with the United States with Canada, there is still a bureaucracy of getting warrants and whatever.
Yeah.
And if you're clever about, not using your credit card or using an assumed name or whatever, for the most part, you got a pretty free run in Alaska. Right. And there is a show called Alaskan Troopers, and they always talk about that. They're like, everybody that breaks the law, south, comes up here, and it's really hard to catch them because, there's all these different, laws and rules that you have to follow to catch them. And not to mention, if they're not using their name or an alias or whatever, it's nearly impossible.
Or native land, all that stuff.
Or all that stuff, right? But this story is about a guy, his wife, and their kids, and a few cousins that have a fishing vessel, and this vessel is called the Investor.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this guy is.
She's a sweet
young.
piece. They said it was the nicest one in that area.
Well, to put it in perspective, it burned for an entire day and didn't sink.
That's true.
So, right. All right. But on this particular voyage, they come into Craig, Alaska, and I didn't really understand this, but they tied up with other boats. Is that what you do when you're like they didn't come into port and tie up in port, right? They tied up on another boat.
Yeah, it was something like that, but that could have been they have pretty big tides.
Okay.
So if you anchor or stay back, you know what I mean, and everybody ties off of the same thing, you can kind of keep all the boats in one place. That's what I'm assuming. But I know they have some pretty significant tides up in Alaska, so that might have play into it.
So this boat was no joke. It was I've heard like $1 million, but a lot of people say like the high 800s, $1,000 boat.
I would guarantee it's well, it was what, 82. The boat nowadays would have been worth or easily 1.5 million. I mean, it was a $850,000 boat in 82. You're talking about a 58-foot top of the line fishing vessel. So that's a hell of a boat he had.
It looked like that show Deep Sea.
Mm-hmm.
That's on Discovery Channel, right? It's like a really nice boat.
Yeah.
So this guy's from Washington. His name's Mark. His wife is with him. His 2 kids are with him, and
She's pregnant.
She's pregnant, right? They pull in, and when they pull in, they're happy. They made a shit ton of money for their haul. So like salmon was, what I read was peak market price.
Yeah.
Right. And they had made a bunch of money, so they went to dinner. And they pull into port and they go to dinner. And there was one guy, and he had been fired in the previous session, and his name was John Peel. So John Peel had been fired by Captain Mark, and they didn't really say why, but it's important to note that the rest of the crew still kind of made contact had contact with him, and he was working on another vessel.
Yeah, him and his wife were only 28.
Right.
Yeah, so they were young.
This Sean Peel guy that had been fired, the rest of the crew still had contact with him, and he was working on another vessel. But when they come into port, the other crew meet up with this guy to buy drugs, is what they say. That's what they say.
Yeah.
So I don't know what drugs are. I don't know if it's weed or like acid.
I don't know.
They never say. They never really say.
That's because they're alleging.
They are.
So they don't have to be specific.
So that night they go back. Mark and his family go back.
About 9, I think it was.
Right.
9:30.
They get back on the boat, and they go to. In the morning,
there's a storm that blew in that night.
There's a storm.
Yeah.
And in the morning, they go to a nearby island. There's an island that's nearby, and people see the investor leaving.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, like, people wave.
Yeah, there was somebody on there, and then he waved back.
They wave to somebody. They think it's Mark, right? Yeah. And then he
takes
this island.
Yeah, he takes the boat out into an inlet and then leaves it and comes back with the ship was big enough to have its own skiff.
Right.
And he took this guy took the skiff back to the dock, where I believe he was also seen at that time too. Right. So, but not all from far, from what I understand.
So then the boat is on fire. And what they had before then, the skiff had come back and gotten to, like, I didn't say how big, but I guess 2 containers of gasoline.
Right.
Boat gas. Right. So I'm guessing 5 gallons or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And Mark and his wife Irene, so
he went back and set that boat on fire.
Well,
that's whoever was in that little skiff.
Whoever's in that skiff. So it's this guy named Mark Coulthurst and his wife Irene. They have 2 kids and a kid in waiting, and then his nephew.
Yeah, it's 4 deckhands. Chris Heyman, 18, Keown, Moon, and Mike Stewart, all 19.
And they were like, they're not like wimpy dudes. They're like athletes. Like the one guy played on the football team. Like they're like big fisherman dudes, right?
Yeah.
But this guy on the skiff comes back, gets gas, comes back to the boat, and then sets it on fire. So he sets it on fire, and another boat had seen that this was happening, and they go out to see it. And when they go towards the boat, the skiff is going past them.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, whoa, are there people on the boat? He's like, yeah, it's burning. Yes. Right?
Yeah.
And they're like, okay. So they like scramble.
Guess we'll save them.
Yeah, right? And they get like the pump boat that like can, spray water on it.
Mm-hmm.
And they do that for a day? Is that right?
Yeah, they had to work on it for a minute. By the time they got to it, it was I think it was the investigator that said that he said that it was just black smoke rolling out of it with flames in it. And he goes, it was one of the most ominous and heart-wrenching things he'd seen.
Right. And whoever's on the skiff actually gets to the port, talks to like several people, right? But
Yeah.
he has like first-hand encounters with like 3 or 4 people. And then disappears.
Mm-hmm.
So they finally get the fire like quelled. They pull it back into port and everybody's dead.
Yeah.
Everybody that we just mentioned has died. And the kids, the mom and dad, the deckhands, everybody's like dead. So they're like, what the hell happened? Well, here, everybody had been shot.
Yep. They were all executed.
Everybody's like, well, there was the guy on the skiff. So when I was in psychology class, they said they don't do this anymore. But they said they used to have this thing where this guy would be like, hey, man, I need you to sign off on this class. I did it. I didn't get credit for it. And, I have my test results here. And the guy's like, yeah, I'll get to you after class. He's like, no, we're doing it now. The guy's like, yeah, okay. The professor's like, yeah, okay, give me a minute. And he's like, no. And he pulls out a gun, shoots the professor. The professor grabs his chest. He has like a blood pack, right?
Yeah.
Falls down, and he goes out the door. And then the professor gets up, and he's like, "Okay, what did he look like?" And everybody had to write down what he looked like, and there were so many varied details about what the guy looked like.
Yeah. And
that's kind of what happened here. Everybody.
They say people are the worst witnesses.
Yeah, everybody talked to him like he had like pock marks, and he was like.
There was a show a while back. I want to say maybe it was the Brain Games show where they staged crimes in front of a bunch of pedestrians, just people walking around don't know any better, and they'd stage a crime in front of them, and then they would do the same thing. They'd sit them all down and ask them, hey, do you mind taking this thing real quick? What did he look like? What was he wearing? Blah, blah. Was it male, female, blah, blah. And they were wildly all over the place. And they were talking to a detective at the time. And he goes, yeah, well, that's what he said. He said people are the worst eyewitnesses.
Mm-hmm. So then they have like a composite sketch. And it's really shoddy. It really is. Yeah. It really is like a shoddy sketch.
Now somebody got there was somebody with, I think, what did they say? They said he had a pock face though.
Yeah, he had a pockmarked face,
pocked complexion or something like that.
Which this guy looks like everybody in '86.
Yeah.
He's got a mullet.
Yeah.
He listens to Whitesnake. Like,
that's right.
This is what he looks like. You know what I mean?
He's wearing a Def Leppard t-shirt.
Totally. So then, it's like 2 years. And really the only thing they could come up with was this guy, John Peel, who had been fired earlier. And they're like, it's him. Mm-hmm. So they go and they take him to fucking trial.
Oh yeah.
And so the first one's a hung jury.
Mm-hmm.
And they fucking prosecute him again.
Mm-hmm.
And the second time it's like he's innocent.
Yeah, they found him not guilty.
And he's like, his whole... So, if you ever look at pictures of this, one of the most brilliant things his fucking defense attorney did is they put him in a ski mask. Which, I didn't know you could do that. But, like, people couldn't point him out. They couldn't say for sure that it was him. And so he fought 2 of these, and he won the second one. And the first time he's like, you know, man, this is really sad. Like, the hung jury, he's like, this is sad. Like, yeah, I got fired, but like, I have a job. Like, I still talk to everybody that was on the crew. Like, I didn't hate him enough to kill him. Like, that's not, what it was. Right. But they were like, they needed somebody to convict. And he ends up, after getting exonerated, he sues them for a ridiculous amount of money.
Yeah, it was $900,000.
Well, that's what he got. But I think he sued him for like $750 million.
Yeah, he sued him for like an outrageous amount, but then the settlement was $900,000 to recoup his legal fees. And
that's what happened. That was it. So he gets his legal fees, and they said, you know, what do you think happened? He's like, you know, I get it, but I'm not going to like waste any more, you know, time and energy on this. You already tried to pin it on me. I don't care anymore. And that was it. Like, they tried.
Yeah, his quote was great. It was somebody was responsible for this. Somebody out there knows what happened, but I'm not going to waste any more of my life on it.
And part of the reason was that he got the settlement was because it was a detective had written on a piece of paper that said that they really didn't have anything but the composite sketch. Like, there was zero physical evidence. Zero. Yeah. And even the circumstantial evidence, you know, like, he sold him drugs. So what? Like, they could never pinpoint, like, a motive.
Yeah, that was the police chief, Shapley. He was convinced that it was the result of a drug deal gone bad.
Right. And they could never pinpoint, like, why that would happen or, you know, anything. So, like...
According to that former police chief, they say Craig floated on drugs in those days.
What she said was bullshit, and I did.
That was somebody else. That was the guy, one of the people the investigators that scoured through the boat looking through the ashes for teeth and bone fragments. He said bullshit.
So that's it. That's all it is. It's a bunch of people got executed on this boat, the investor. They tried to pin it on somebody, John Peel. And when they tried to pin it on him, there was really no evidence that said he did it. He's been exonerated. And now it's like a really great mystery. And the police in Alaska aren't doing anything because they think they have the right man. Mm-hmm. So let's get into the facts. Okay, so here's the major problem. Mm-hmm. Is exactly what we just said before. He looks like every dude in 1986 that listens to Whitesnake. And that's what everybody said. Literally, the mayor of the town was one of the people that talked to him. His name was Lee Alexander, and he said he's just a guy. He could have been anybody else. He was super cool, but he came on. He said, "Yeah, there's people on there." He came on ashore. He talked to like 3 people. The mayor was one of them, and then he just disappeared. And he said, "There's 500 guys in this town that look just like him," and that is true. If you look at this guy, even the sketch, he looks like everybody in 1986.
Yeah, but and to be fair, nobody at that point's going, "This is the guy that did it. I should remember what the fuck he looks like," you know?
So, there's a few theories.
So real quick, as far as timeline goes, when they came from that dinner at 9:30 and got back on the boat, so was the whole crew. It was like everybody that we talked about. They were all on there, and then like a storm happened that night. And what they said is that it was at that moment that whoever killed them got onto the boat that night, shot them all dead, returned the next day, and drove them, or he shot them dead, and then he returned the next day and moved the boat?
Yeah, because...
Oh, no, he moved the boat, then the next day he came back and set it on fire. So it was 2 separate days.
So a lot of people thought when they saw the boat still there in the morning that it should have already been out to fish again.
Right. Because the season was coming to an end.
Right. And they said it was weird that it hadn't left. But then
everybody hits it hard right at the end.
Right. But then, it was still there. And then when it did start to pull away, somebody did wave at somebody, on the shore or on the dock or whatever. They waved to him, and that was like enough. And everybody... It is the 80s. There's not I don't understand, because there's CBs and shit, right? Then? I mean...
Yeah, oh yeah, they would have had radios, yeah. But he said there was some other skipper that was nearby, and he waved nonchalantly at him as he drove by, and apparently at that point that was him, and all the people were dead underneath and down below. And He drove the boat out to some inlet, and then a little while later he come motoring back on the investor's skiff, and then he returned the next afternoon. So that skiff would have had to have been sitting in the dock that belonged to the investor, and the investor at this point is sitting where it eventually is found on fire, and that's when he comes back the next afternoon and gets with the cans of gasoline and went back out to the boat, set it on fire, and then came back to the town, and then vanished after talking to several people.
So, okay.
And when the chief, Ray Shapley, got there, he said that's the one that said there was black smoke coming out from the wheelhouse, but there was nobody on deck, and it made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. So it was like blowing out, flaming up good.
Everybody pointed at John Peel, and there was no real good motive.
Now, there was another detective there that was from Washington State that was helping him out with the case. His name was McNeil, Dave McNeil. He was helping with the investigation. And he's the one that said that the drug thing was bullshit.
Because it kind of sounds like it is.
But he said it was what he said was it was a pretty damn good investigation. He says that they cross their T's and dotted their I's.
Fine. You get fired, but you still know everybody. You know them well enough that they're going to call you for drugs because they just killed it for the season, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying, just whatever. You know them well enough that they're like, hey, let's call John. He's probably got drugs. And they never say what the drugs are. They never said if it's weed or coke or whatever.
No.
So fine. They call John, all right? And he's like, yeah, totally. Let's meet up. But you have to murder everybody? That is the diff for me.
That's a vendetta.
I get why the jury's no. It makes no sense. So what, they're gonna buy drugs for you, but then you're gonna murder them? That makes no sense at all. You know what I mean? And yeah, he does look like the personal accounts, but like they say, there's 500 other guys in that town that look exactly like them. So that one thing that I heard because there's not a ton on this, because Alaska, the investigators for this, they just they were like, we had our guy and we didn't have enough to convict him, and they just shut it down. Mm-hmm. So they literally say it's John Peel, we just couldn't convict him, which to me, I think sometimes you get tunnel vision in an investigation.
Yeah.
And I think that's what happened here.
Mm-hmm.
So there was other stuff, a lot of people were skeptical of how he got a ship like that at 28.
Yeah, because it like you said, it was a hell of a ship, and it was the nicest one of anybody's fleet. And they said by far it was the nicest one of anybody's.
Right. And a lot of people had said that there had been, the investor was kind of a pseudonym, sort of, mm-hmm. for nefarious funds that came in.
Right. Now, according to his sister, Lori Hart, though,
everybody said he's a hard worker.
Super hard worker. She said that he had swore he was going to retire by the time he was 50, and she never doubted it because he was always banging away, always had irons in the fire. She said. So, and that's what most people said about him. They said, but he was really well loved. Everybody liked him. They say he's a super nice guy that everybody said he was the best skipper around. Super great guy to work for, all that stuff. So, I mean, all his guys, some of the deckhands that died were even saying that about Mark. And you start to wonder how the Keown guys, older brother Brian, he said he was the best skipper around. Every one of his crew wanted to be like Mark. And if that dude's brother saying that, and he knew nefarious shit was going on, which he would because it's his brother, you would think he would be like, that piece of shit got my brother killed with his bullshit drug dealing. You know what I mean? You'd think there'd be at least one of the family members that knew what was going on if it was big drug deals going and they went wrong, and they would blame him, They wouldn't be going around going, he's a great guy.
The other thing is the police, and this was something I read and I saw in a YouTube documentary. So take that with what you will. But there were 29 pictures, and 8 of them were John Peel. And people were like, "Yeah, that's the guy. That's it." Well, yeah. if like a quarter to a third of them are the pictures of John Peel, then right. Yeah. And you look at pictures from that time. It almost
I've heard of cases even where they've used where it's like if it's a guy that's been in and out of prison a few times and he's got like several pictures on file, and they put those mug shots in, and they just leave one as an exemption, and all the rest of them are the dude they want them to pick out. It's like, well, that's bullshit
so
right there.
Right. And I have a problem with sometimes like the police work backwards. They pick somebody, and then they work backwards, and they're like, well, we'll make it him, and it's easy to do that when you can manipulate all the evidence, and you have all the
and that leads to your tunnel vision.
That's what it is. Yeah. But like back to Mark and Irene, a lot of people had thought like this boat had, it's in
a little above their pay grade.
Yeah, like in its infancy, it was developed out of some kind of nefarious funds, or there was somebody that had an interest, like an investor, and that was how they got their money to get the boat. Which, honestly, you're 28 and you have $1 million boat.
You can make bad decisions.
You're either the best fisherman ever, and in this, like, also this is 1986. So, like, hold on real quick. Let me just look at this real quick. Give me 1 second. Let me log into my phone. $1 million. One, two, three. Let's see. In 1986.
82.
Okay, fine. 82.
September 5th, 1982.
Yeah, it's $3 million.
What is?
So like the boat.
The boat.
So like it's a $3 million boat.
Yeah, it's up there. That's what I was saying. It was. There's no way.
Even right now,
850 holds up nowadays.
I don't know what you were doing at 28. What were you doing at 28?
Man, I can't remember what I was doing yesterday.
Did you have a $3 million boat?
No.
No, me either. I
had $3 million dreams of boats.
I had a $3 million, or I had a $3,000 Porsche that needed a timing chain.
I think I had a $1,300 fucking minivan.
But like, you know what I mean? Like that seems like way out of character for somebody that is doing it right now. Like, I get it, you're a fisherman, but it's called the investor.
Could have been invested in their future.
The other thing is, none of the other crew, because they did an extensive investigation on the crew.
Yeah. None of the other one of them that got them killed.
Exactly. And none of the other crew like came up with any kind of red flags or like any kind of like evidence or anything like that.
Yeah. And
that was kind of why they focused on John Peel. And that was really it. And like that was probably to the state's demise, was that the one thing that they had was that he got fired was like really not that strong of a argument, because he was already working on another ship.
Yeah, he said he was asleep on that ship when the murders took place.
Right. And not only that, like, the people on their ship called him for drugs. So, like, he obviously doesn't have that bad of a relationship with them. You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
yeah, but he might have a different. Sometimes things happen behind closed doors. Those guys might not have been aware of. Maybe him and Mark had something else going on, you know. And he was like, "Yeah, I'll take this opportunity to come over and sell you some drugs, shoot you in your fucking face," you know.
Okay, we're gonna get into that in the next part, but that's where we're at. Like, that's pretty much all the facts. I mean,
yeah, there's
there's not a. You could, like, there's a bunch of other stuff, but like the main points are pretty much what we told you.
Yeah.
There are other things that come into play, but like honestly, they're all like auxiliary. They're not the focus of like what happened. So let's get into what we think. Okay, I'm gonna go first in this one.
All right, Tim.
So, I don't think it was John Peel.
Okay.
I don't think it had anything to do with anybody on the boat except for Mark, the main guy. Yeah. And that's why I say that, is because Mark Coulthurst is his name. So the reason I think that is because the boat and that you don't give a boat to somebody like that. And I know people say he worked his ass off. Whatever. No, no. I've been in business too long to know that you don't come from nothing and then get it without something attached to it. Yeah. So like, everybody's like, he worked his ass off. Okay, cool, awesome, great. But he's 28. He's 28, and so what did they say? It was $30,000 was this haul, right? 38.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay, cool. Let's just go with that. $30,000. All right, $30,000, right?
Mm-hmm.
You get $1 million boat for $30,000?
Mm-hmm.
No, you don't. No, you get a $300,000 boat.
Yeah, an 850 credit score.
For $30,000, you get, for a $30,000 haul, you get a $300,000 boat. You don't get $1 million boat.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, in my opinion, I do think this John Peel guy got railroaded. I think, like, they tried to have one narrative, and it was to their fault, because it sounds ridiculous that, like, somebody that's that young in their 20s has that much of a vendetta that they're like, fuck you, I'm gonna kill your wife, your kids, all your deckhands, set the boat on fire, get in a skiff, talk to a bunch of people, and then fucking disappear.
Right.
Like, in my opinion, somebody was curbing their risk in the fishing industry.
totally possible. I mean, you watch Deadliest Catch, some guys are pretty cutthroat sometimes, man.
They bet on
It wasn't even
this
one
guy.
of the dudes convicted of murder on Deadliest Catch or some shit.
Right. They bet on this guy. And when they did, he didn't come through.
Mm-hmm.
And when he didn't come through, because $30,000 with $1 million boat is not coming through.
Mm-hmm.
And when he didn't come through, they're like, everybody's gonna go. And then it was like insurance time. The only thing about the insurance is that, did anybody get it?
Yeah, that's the question I have. I don't know what the payout went to or what, and that could be in the fine print. Might be answer some questions. I would think if it went somewhere, you're like, even if it was like an investment group or something like that, you know, like it would fall back on them for whoever the lender was. Maybe, I don't know, because I wouldn't think he paid cash for the boat, right?
No, probably not.
So there's going to be a lender. I wonder if the insurance falls back on the lender.
So my theory is that he went in business with somebody that was either... So at this time, I know this sounds crazy, but at this time, there was mafia in Alaska. And the reason was because Alaska, they have giant amounts of money, right?
Yeah.
For stuff, right? They have oil.
Yeah, everybody gets a check in Alaska.
They have yeah, right. They have fish. They have all this stuff you can make money on, like big amounts of money.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Mm-hmm. And I think either he got like a loan shark loan
mm-hmm.
with predatory interest rates or hikes or whatever, and he didn't meet that, or another fisherman went rogue and was like, I'm gonna team up with you, and gave him the money to do it, and he didn't come through and eliminated him.
Mm-hmm.
Because that boat was able to make so much money, and if you eliminate that boat, you can make that money.
Mm-hmm.
But the John Peel angle, to me, makes no sense. And I get why it was a hung jury, and then it was exonerated.
Yeah,
it makes that to me makes total sense. Because like, but okay, he fired him, so. But like, they're still good friends enough to like call him for drugs, which means they trust him, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he's gonna be so mad that he kills kids.
Yeah,
like kids, dude. The kids.
He would have most likely known she was pregnant too.
You know how hard it is to kill a 5-year-old? I don't know. I'm not a killer, but like, I would think if I was like an assassin, a 5-year-old would be the most difficult because they're like the cutest.
Yeah, it's like the movies you see sometimes where they got like that one stipulation, like I won't do kids, and then they show up and it's a kid, and they're like, nope, I'm not gonna do it, and the whole movie starts.
Yeah, my son's 5. My son's like the cutest thing on earth, right?
Right.
I couldn't imagine.
Yeah, 5 and 4.
Him.
A 5-year-old girl and a 4-year-old boy.
Right? I couldn't imagine like shooting him. Like, realistically, as somebody like in this position, what Alaskan cops are saying they did, I can't imagine. That's like a level of hatred that just didn't fit with this guy.
Yeah.
So he got fired in his 20s. Like, people get fired in their 20s. You're like, yeah, I mean, you're not there yet. You know, it's not like the end of your life. You know. So I think somebody had some kind of interest and
took him out.
That's what I think.
Yeah, I'm pretty much on those same kind of lines. I mean, I was looking into the Peel guy pretty hard at first because I was trying to see if it was like, if there was something else to it. But like you said, the only other thing that he could have interest in is if there was like some big drug thing going on. And according to the guy I mentioned earlier that was helping out from Washington State, was he was convinced that he said the drugs had nothing to do with it. He was convinced that they had the right guy, that Peel was the guy. But the more you look at it, it's like you said, there's just not enough for somebody to go completely. But this wasn't what they call crime of passion, where it was messy and brutal, and you know what I mean? It was executed, right? Then carefully and thoughtfully and with patience and calm.
And he talked
over
to
2
people.
days. You know what I mean? That's a lot of that's ice in your veins. So
he waved to people
mm-hmm.
and then talked to people.
It sounds like a hit.
It sounds like a hit. He went and got gas, dog.
Now here's the thing.
Was like,
here's what the thing is. I know he like the whole next day. Like he knew he could just.
He's like, you know what I need? I need gas.
Yeah, I'm not gonna get up early.
It's not even funny, but yeah, it is.
I'm not even rolling out of bed until noon, bro. and then, like I said, I mean that takes a. There's something there. That takes a level of cool,
right,
to pull off that, because he wasn't like you said, where it's like, oh crap, what do I do? Panic, trying to hide his face from people. He's fucking waving at them, and then instead of just like taking the boat out somewhere and like trying to sink it or setting it on fire right immediately, you know, because you could just get all the cloths and everything you could, pile them in the center and start them on fire and get off the boat.
But that thing burned for a whole day.
Yeah, so he didn't do that.
Like,
it was all thoughtful and careful, planned out, and what he was trying to do was destroy evidence.
That's a legit boat.
Mm-hmm.
That can burn for a day and not sink.
Yeah.
They end up towing it in.
Yeah, they towed it in because it did not sink at all.
It didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is funny, because there was this a while back. I believe it was Irene was trying to show their naval might.
Mm-hmm.
Because what had happened is somebody was looking on Google Earth and they saw this boat, and it looked like an American aircraft carrier.
Mm-hmm.
But when they compared it size-wise to the things around it, it was nowhere near the size of a normal American aircraft carrier. And what it was their little exercise video where they put this carrier, they just built it out of sheet steel, welded together, blah, 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 made this floating craft that resembled the shape of an American aircraft carrier, so they could show their naval might and sink it on camera and show how they could sink a U.S. aircraft carrier.
Right. Yeah.
And they drove around that thing. They hit it with rocket propelled grenades. They were shooting it with 50 cal mounted guns. They rode around. That thing didn't. They had to tow it back into shore. And that's where you see on Google Earth was when after they tried to wreck it, and their little propaganda video failed because they couldn't get it to sink. They couldn't even get a fake boat to sink.
That was funny.
That's immediately what I thought of when I was thinking of that fire burn. I was like, that stupid video of them trying to sink a boat they built. But yeah, I think too, here's the other thing I think too. There could be something with this. Mark, they were based out of Blaine, Washington.
Right.
So he's got a boat that can go from Alaska, bypass Canada, and go to Washington. That probably is important to somebody.
I agree.
So if you want to get something, and here's the thing too, is back in that time, that's when, and all the way up until the 90s, until Canada switched positions, they had grow ops were a thing up in Canada, big time, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. There was like a lot of them. People didn't realize how much it was, but there was these grow ops, and they were growing weed because weed was illegal, and that all the weed, we were getting tons of weed coming down from Canada. Because there was these people, what they do is they take these, they take the cargo boxes, right? They get a bunch of cargo boxes, go out in the Canadian wilderness. They dig holes in the ground, drop these boxes down in them, and then they'd grow weed in them. And what they do is they blindfold a bunch of people. I think they called them clippers. And what they do is they blindfold them. They drive in a van to the location, take them down underground. Then they take the hood off, and all they do is clip the leaves off of buds all day long. And they're trimming all the buds out so that they can sell them. And then they blindfold them, and they take them back, and they make a bunch of money off of it. It was a big thing in Canada, and it got real big in like the 90s. So there could be something to do with that. It also
I'm going to say
this
real quick. Hawaii and Alaska were the first and only states before California went medicinal that you were allowed to have your own pot.
Mm-hmm.
You were allowed to have your own pot plants. So,
but you weren't in Canada or the United States mainland.
Okay, you weren't.
So now you got a guy that's got a boat that can bypass those two.
Yeah, but weed in Alaska and weed in Hawaii was just allowed.
Yeah, but it wasn't.
They did.
But if you got to take it somewhere else to make big money, because if you're allowing it, you're not going to make big money. If you're not allowing it, you're going to make big money.
You think that they're coming to Washington with it?
Yeah, that's what I think that
that's actually a really
and I think
point.
What happened
that's a really solid point because honestly, you were allowed 12 plants per person, and so like a plant can yield almost a pound of weed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's 12 pounds of weed. So if you have say you have 20 people, you have 240 pounds of weed.
Yeah.
That would kind of fit into my narrative that it's something else.
Yeah, and like I said,
it's not the guy giving you like a quarter bag or like an 8-ball. It's somebody that's moving massive, and that makes sense that you have $1 million boat in the 80s.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'll give you that.
Because you know who else had $1 million boats in the 80s? All the dudes down there in all the dudes down in Miami, bro.
Crockett and Tubbs.
All those dudes down in Miami had $1 million cigarette boats, man.
Yeah, man. I mean,
they were running drugs across as faster than they could catch them. So, I
have always thought the boat name, the Investor, is really cryptic. It's like, come on, man.
Yeah.
Why'd you name it the Investor?
Yeah.
You didn't name it King Salmon.
So what my theory is that he did, like you said, somebody invested to get in this boat, and under the stipulation that after the season, when he returned home, that he would, all through the fishing season while they're growing, they package it, put it on the boat. He returns down to Washington with all this weed, and he tried to back out of it. Because
like $30,000 compared to $1 million boat, like look, there's like a fishing game that you can play online, and you get a spear, right? And it starts with a spear, and you have like a little rowboat, right?
Right.
And that fish is $50. Well, then you get a bigger boat, and then you have your little spear, and you get hit more on that bigger boat. But then you get like the hydraulic spear, and you get like the $500 fish, right?
Yeah.
And so on and so on and so on until you're making $1 million hitting fish. Okay. Why the fuck are they on $1 million boat making $30,000?
Well, that was one haul, right?
Dude.
Or was that their season total?
Well, even if they do it twice, what's $60,000?
Well, no, there was
still.
They were at the end of the season.
They were at the end of the season, and their season, even if it's 30, it's not enough. It's not enough to cover that $1 million. Something else is something.
I doubt that 30,000 was total haul. I bet you that's one haul because you go out, you go out for so long, you come back, you weigh your haul, you get paid, and then you go back out again. You keep doing that until the season's over. They
were 1 week away from the season. That's what it said.
Yeah.
So they didn't do that. And it's called the investor. The investor means somebody else fucking gave him money, man.
I think so. I think somebody gave him money, and I think
you call it the Big Mark or fucking.
And I don't know. From the way I feel about it is that what I said didn't happen under an initial agreement. Like there wasn't like, we'll give you this money as long as you do this. I think they came back to him and said, hey, look, we need you to do this for us since we're footing the bill on this.
I agree with you.
And he turned them down.
Something else happened.
And the people that really were concerned about it, not the bank, whoever gave them the money,
right.
But the people behind that bank that were calling the shots said, well, then we'll just fucking take him out.
When you kill kids, it means everybody's got to go.
That's a message, man.
That is the message. Everybody's got to go. And when everybody has to go,
you're cleaning the house.
That's deeper than just some guy you fired.
Yeah, that's cleaning the house.
And you can't blame the juries for saying hung jury, even at the time when drugs were terrible, right? I mean, dude, look, we were at that age when they were like, drugs are horrible, right? We were dare kids. Me and you were dare kids, right?
Right.
And they're like, drugs are horrible. But even me and you are like, for weed?
Yeah. Well, like, I didn't know that was part of this.
Right. It's not, it's just not enough. And I think even at the time.
But like I said, it can't be overlooked that I know now it's like the entire country of Canada went completely legal rec, the entire country.
Right.
But they weren't like that back then. They weren't like that at all. They were fighting against all the grow ops, and they didn't have a.
Okay,
our big problem at that time were crack and cocaine, right? But their big problem were these grow ops because they couldn't regulate them, they couldn't find them, and it drove them nuts. And they were making money hand over fist doing it.
So my senior year, you had to pick a topic in government, and you had to write a 20-page paper on one topic. And I picked weed. And I didn't even smoke weed, really, in high school. I really didn't. I didn't smoke weed until I moved to California. But the first thing I cited
a guy that I worked with was that one of the builders that we worked for. He said I was telling him about somebody, a buddy of mine, and he goes, "Oh, he's that California sober."
Yeah, right.
Like he doesn't do anything but smoke weed.
Yeah, exactly. Dude, people say it all the time. They're like, I'm not a party tonight, dude. I'm just gonna sit home. I'm gonna have a glass of red wine and just smoke some pot, bro. And you're like, dude, that's fucking. You're partying. I don't know.
That's it. That's what we were gonna do too.
But like, listen, honestly, I didn't smoke pot. I would smoke when I was drunk. People are like, you want to smoke a joint? I'm like, cool. But then I moved to LA and I had anxiety. And somebody's like, you just need to smoke pot. And I started smoking like medicinal pot. And I'm like, oh, I get it. And then I was like, I smoked it for a long time. But back to like the high school thing, I wrote this paper, and the first thing I cited was that Alaska and Hawaii, because they were the last two states in the Union, right? Mm-hmm. The one thing that their native people said is you can't take weed away, because Alaska had the Northern Lights and Hawaii had Maui Wowie, which is ridiculous. But they had grown that. It was part of their deal, and they were allowed to smoke it. It's been legal there since the beginning. So, like, you've always been allowed to have 12 plants in Alaska and Hawaii. And so when I read this, and the first thing I thought was back to high school, and I'm like, he didn't fucking, not for weed.
Yeah. Not
for weed. The cocaine, okay, I guess you're getting cocaine in Alaska, but I said none of that makes any sense. Like, for this
maybe if it's coming from Russia.
Okay, well, this John Peel guy, where's he getting his cocaine? You know, it just didn't make any sense. However, the guy that owns the boat, you know, you have a family and you're like, I need a boat. And then it's called the investor. It means there's more people involved. And that's why I kind of think something happened with him, because that makes a lot more sense than this, you know, guy he fired that already has another job, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, like, even if it was a bank that legit loaned him the thing, there's people at the bank, like, that work there that are people, right? So
exactly,
they can get got to, you know, you can have, like you said, if the mafia was up there, they could step in, find out that this bank loaned the money for this guy to get this boat, and that boat's perfect to take this on, and they tried to get him to do it, and he told him no. And he might be a stand-up guy and be like, you know what, don't come to me again, or I'll fucking tell everybody what you said.
I wouldn't have my family on the boat. I wouldn't talk a ton of shit with my family next to me. Here's why. We have a family friend. Actually, where your brother got married and I got married.
Yeah.
The girl that runs that is from Zimbabwe.
Right.
She's like, let's go to Zimbabwe. I'm like, no.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, you know why no? It's because by myself, maybe. Me and you, probably not. Me, you, and the kids, no fucking way. Here's why. We get there, and then what? I get fucking hijacked? What am I supposed to do with you?
Right.
Like, they're just going to take you and the kids. You're blonde. And the kids are blonde. They're just like, what is my defense? Like, how am I supposed to defend that? You know what I mean? Yeah. So, like, as a dad, and when I told her that, she's like, well, I don't think it's that bad. And then she talked to the girl. Actually, Michaela, that was her in Zimbabwe. Yes. Yeah. And Michaela's like, yeah, no. Actually, my parents just moved here because it's really bad.
Yeah, get the fuck out.
My parents just moved.
The temperature changes over there real quick.
Yeah, she's like
politically.
She's like, my parents moved to Indiana because it's really bad. They
Mhm.
got asylum because there's like this uprising.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she's like, yeah, you should not go there.
Right.
At all. And she's from there. That's like me saying you shouldn't go to
a lot of bad blood with old Whitey around that area.
Totally.
Yeah,
right.
What it used to be,
So,
like what we talked about, she's a roadie. Michaela's a roadie. She was the British Empire had renamed the country Rhodesia.
So why would you, like, the captain was caught completely off guard. You wouldn't.
Well, he's not thinking that. I don't think. I just don't think he might not have taken it serious, because he might have been like, no.
Dummy.
And then he's saying to himself, I'm going, because it could have happened the day before, you know what I mean? At any point when they were on shore or something like that. And maybe he's like, nah, I don't even know what the fuck that guy, and we're getting out of here tomorrow anyway. You know what I mean?
You're a dad. You taking your wife and kids with the possibility of somebody coming back on you? Because, listen, why would they kill the guys that just bought the drugs from them? All right, fine. It's that John Peel guy. Why would you kill the guys that just bought? Like, I guess they're witnesses. Fine, but like, he could.
Like I said, it could just been it sounded like a message, and it's like, hey, if the next fucking boat captain we ask to do this, you better fucking take it serious.
That is exactly what it sounds like. I agree with you. Yeah. Because, like, you're a dad, I'm a dad. You wouldn't put your whole entire family at risk. You might put yourself at risk.
And then I think they're overlooking that, like, that part of it, how cool and calculated this was. It wasn't like this panic, upset moment where, like,
no, that motherfucker went up there, executed every single one of those people, left, got gas,
woke up at noon. Stopped
it,
got some gas, took his fucking time, waving to people on his way out.
Crazy.
Yeah, man. So that's a cold-blooded dude right there. Play it cool, wave at people, don't give them any reason to question you.
Talk to people.
And if you just murdered a bunch of people and you're some sweaty fucking 19-year-old drug dealer, you're not being cool.
He talked to
you're not gonna play it cool like that. And for all we know,
the mayor.
It could have been two different people too.
He talked to the mayor.
If you think about it, it could have been the guy that drove the boat out and parked it, and the guy that burned it down could have been two different people, and that's why there's conflicting stories about what a guy looked like.
Definitely, 100%.
Yeah. You're like,
hey. So I think we're both in agreement. It wasn't John Peel. It was somebody else.
Yeah, and I think that somebody else fucked up when he shot them all, and then they sent somebody back out to destroy the evidence.
Well, maybe they fucked up because nobody's caught the guy since, and Alaskan State Patrol is like, that's it.
Yeah.
Well, we had our guy. He got away with it.
Yeah. And his statement. Peel's statement, I'm not gonna, it sounded cold-blooded at first. Like, it sounded like this dismissive answer that, like, a guy does. But when you think about it, if he's like, I'm not this guy and I'm not gonna fucking waste my life with this bullshit. So
you get it.
Yeah.
If that was you, you'd be like, fuck it, man. I'm sorry this happened, but fuck. What do you want from me? That's basically what that statement was. I'm not going to waste any more time on this.
They do that in politics too. They ask the same people the same questions every time, so that they get frustrated with the question, and then they refuse to answer it, and then they call that a refusal to answer the question. You know what I mean? It's the same thing. They do it all the time. They're like, do you deny being this? And then, and if they don't say it every single fucking time, they'll get them that one time. And that, I think that's what they were trying to do with him. They were just trying to lean on him hard. And that's the response that came out, It's like, okay, look, somebody knows what happened. Somebody did this, but I'm not wasting my fucking time on it anymore.
Right.
I told you everything I know.
I understand that. I really do.
So, yeah, I think there was something deeper to this that maybe even Irene didn't know about.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Irene didn't know anything. Because if she knew, her and the kids wouldn't have been on the boat.
And it might not even been like I said, it might not have been like where they had him doing something and he went to him and said, I'm not fucking doing it. Because then you're right. Then you would have reason to be scared and you wouldn't sit in the port. You would fucking leave. But if one of those scenarios where he was making moves to get out of it and he thought he was being slick and they caught wind of it and he didn't realize that they were onto him.
For me,
you know what I'm saying?
I agree.
Yeah, so like he could have been doing something like setting up some escrow account or buying some island in the Caymans or some shit like that. You know what I mean?
How did he get so big so quick?
Right. Who knows though? I mean,
but I know, but you're exactly what you're saying. How did he get so big so quick? Right. And then he gets really big really quick, and all of a sudden his whole family gets executed. Okay.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, it could be like you said. It could just been a ruthless rival fisherman that was eliminating his competition.
That could have been.
It's a stretch for me, but it could have been, man. I mean, times might get tough up there in Alaska. It gets cold at night when it does become night.
To me, the amount of money he made to what the boat cost is a problem.
Yeah.
That sounds disproportionate.
Yeah, but not.
It sounds like not
off the charts.
Oh, it's a lot. Yeah, but like it's $1 million, and you make 30,000. That's not enough. That's not enough to an investor. You know.
Yeah, but sometimes like builders buy big pieces of equipment, and they know they ain't gonna get paid off for a while.
You give a guy $1 million boat and he brings back 30,000. Is that enough?
I don't know. Like I said, I don't know about that haul take. I think if that haul take was just a one-time shot, then he could have.
They said the season.
It's just like
that was the season.
Well, no, that was like what I'm saying is that the seasons aren't long,
right? So,
and I think there's 2 of them for salmon, but I couldn't be wrong.
But they said that was a good haul for the season.
Yeah.
So like, I don't know, man. You make it up on crab? I don't know.
Yeah, well, he's gonna do more than just the salmon. They take advantage of a few different fish up there that come into season, and they switch over and stuff like that. Just the crabbers do the same thing. You usually I don't think you get a lot of crossover from fish to crab. But you get different types of crab and different types of fish. So like you would have, a blue crab season or whatever, a snow crab season and then a king crab season. And
a lot of the stories said that
there's another crab I'm forgetting about.
A lot of the stories said he went from being an average fisherman, and everybody's like, he worked his ass off. So I'm not saying he didn't work his ass off. To having like the best ship.
Seems wrong.
Right?
Yeah, I think somebody was
at the core of it. It's like somebody had it out for it. Like,
yeah, he didn't hold up his end of the bargain somehow.
Exactly,
and they got
exactly
him.
What it was. Exactly, that's exactly what I think. Yeah. All right.
I
So
think that's it.
I think that's it.
Nailed
All
it.
right. Well,
Another one
I
solved.
think we did. Another one solved. I'm Anthony.
I'm Brandon.
And this is Everything That's Weird.
For show notes and merchandise, go to www.everythingthat'sweird.com. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter. And be sure to like, subscribe, and review anywhere that you listen to podcasts. Thank you for listening. See you next time. Thank you for listening to the podcast. If you'd like to contribute, please go to our Patreon page at Everything That's Weird. Check us out on Instagram at Everything That's Weird or Twitter at ETWPod. Or if you'd like to send us an old-fashioned email, go to everythingthat'sweird@gmail.com.